My fellow INTPs, how are you? And good morning, good evening, world. Uh, but first I can ask, how are you? How are you today? Um, Second, I will say, I have a number of thoughts I've been going through. Here's my current book I'm reading right now. Excellent book. It's fascinating to think about how the whole world, like it's almost like the ball got rolling and then it went into every field. So what I mean by that is this person essentially proposed. Through this book, I learned about the term positivism as well as relativism, and it proposed before this person spelled it out. The proposed way that science grew was through amassed amounts of knowledge gathered in one shared narrative. And over time, that shared narrative grew and became like new theories and stuff. However, what Kuhn suggests here, Thomas Kuhn, he says instead that what happens is a certain cycle. If you are familiar with generation theory, or if you've ever heard the word disruption, you could be familiar with what the cycle is. The cycle goes like before the field becomes mature, there are many competing theories and almost like amateur type experiments being run, people sharing their own opinions, like back of the napkin calculations. But then at some point there is a created theory that everyone realizes, we can use that, we can accept that. And then what follows is now a formalized field. The next step after that is inevitably, as the formalized field gathers more evidence, they come upon an anomaly, something that doesn't fit the current theory. If enough anomalies are found, it begins to erode the faith, or not the faith, but the ability to rely upon the existing theory. And people begin to start, as what he calls normal science is being done, which is everyone has accepted the paradigm, they act as if the paradigm is unquestionable. They just simply speak from it. But as more and more anomalies are found, people back out of the paradigm and they start to speak from pre-paradigm, and they speak from other more fundamental ideas like philosophy, and if you looked into quantum mechanics, you see that as the pioneers of quantum mechanics were sorting things out, they dove into philosophy like the Bhagavad Gita and these ideas of non-duality and like the consciousness of the universe, this kind of idea. In the same way, or in a more general sense, Thomas Kuhn suggests that science consists of this cycle of normal science, accepted paradigm, discoveries of anomalies, prompting the desire for a better fitting theory, and then someone proposes the theory that solves all the problems. Everyone abandons the old paradigm and takes on the new one, and this happens whenever that happens. I've been thinking about that, and I've been thinking about how this can be, I feel like it can be analogized to so many more things beyond science. This whole idea, I think this happens with technology all the time, where people literally live in a new reality as a far-reaching technology becomes mainstream. But also culturally, I think we are currently in, I think it's right to think that we are in a cultural revolution. where people are suggesting all different ways, like people have backed out of the science of culture instead of, as in, like, instead of saying, oh, you and I both agree, so thus we have the same values, and so thus we have the same problems that we'd like to solve, right? But that's not true. We have found that that is not there, and so people back up. The people that are most desirous of a solution, they back out into higher level ways of looking and thinking, philosophy, spirituality, and they seek to redefine what it means to be alive. And that sounds quite analogous to this, where we're re-establishing the fundamentals. I find that interesting. So that's the first idea I wanted to think about, and I'll just keep thinking about it because it's just on my mind right now. I think it's quite illuminating. It does inform me also practically about what I can do as an INTP. It helps me understand. Well, okay. Here's a second thought that I had that's related. In the idea of, like what he calls incommensurable paradigms, which, like, if you viewed things from Aristotelian physics and you move into Newtonian physics, you can no longer look at things that way. It's no longer compatible. It's like one person speaking French, another person speaking Japanese, right? In the same way, I feel that MBTI shows us that each of us sees from incompatible realities. And thus, if I accept that is true, then my expectations of people can be completely different. If I understand that someone is not INTP, then I don't have to expect them to speak to me like an INTP. I'm currently working with an ESTJ. And to expect the ESTJ to tell me what I need to know as an INTP is just, it's wishful thinking. First, let me organize what I'm talking about here. So the first idea I talked about was, I'm reading this book, and it talks about how paradigms shift in scientific revolutions. Second one is the extension of this into my own practical life, and one way I am applying it is considering the reality that each type lives in their own reality, and understanding that my expectations of people can be completely different. I do not have to walk around expecting everyone to talk to me like an INTP. What I can do instead, perhaps, standing in that place, what can I do? I'm considering taking on the role of the INTP completely. Instead of saying, hey, I wish you talked to me with TI, I can say, I get it. I am the TI here. I will be the TI for my environment. And I will talk to myself, and I will build that up. I will any for the environment. And I think this can probably rub a lot of people the wrong way, because it will be necessarily quite self-centered and unwilling to share. I mean, it's like, said positively, it is extreme ownership. But I think it is better than the alternative, which is to attempt to live in someone else's reality and feel lost all the time. So what does this mean practically here? It means to take extreme ownership, complete ownership of the project, and do it the way that I think, and build out the documents that I wish people would communicate with me with, and be okay with no one finding any of those things that I do useful, because they are what I need. in a more general sense, this is how I wish to go about my whole life, living very powerfully in the TINE of the world, is just as valid as every other type, as every other reality, as I talked about in my previous video. And it doesn't matter if there is a shared outcome that other people will accept from this, because almost like the action itself is its own reward. I get to create a world where INTPs can be comfortable. I can create the world that I am comfortable in. Let me find the thread here, because there is something I want to say about that. Yes. So I think that last thing I said is quite reminiscent of the concept of, there are people that talk about how like life is suffering, life is pain, right? But you can choose what suffering you are willing to go through, what is worth the suffering. I'm going to flip that personally, because I think that statement is a very SI-oriented statement. An SI type, an SI dominant, or an SI dominant understands that this is like their biggest talent and a big like source of meaning for them. Endurance, suffering, just persistence, grit. These are very SI ideas. So instead of focusing there, I think the INTP equivalent statement is follow your curiosities wherever they take you. And the reason why this is the same statement is because the curiosities are not linked to outcomes. The curiosities will take me places where there will be dead ends, there will be failures, there will be many things that don't work, there will be many things that I discover aren't true, but because it is my second function, it is meaningful, and thus I will not treat this like it is suffering. I mean, like meaninglessness creates suffering, but action towards meaning that is painful makes the action meaningful, and so it's not treated as pain. I mean, like, for example, if I go for a 5-kilometer run, that's painful, right? But I wanted to do it, and now that's okay. But if I held a gun to someone's head and said, run 5 kilometers, it might hurt a lot more, just because of the context. So in a very strange way, when I say follow your curiosity, I am saying, hey, in a way I'm saying life is suffering. I am saying that. But I'm focusing on the meaning. An SI type, like if you look at the most mainstream motivational videos out there, I think they are talking to ISTJs, ISFJs, ESFJs. They say, you want to take care of your family? It's all about hard work and grit and perseverance. That's SIFETE. I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying pursue meaning. And if you pursue meaning, then it's no longer pain, but it is instead life. And a TE type, for example, will say it's not worth it unless the outcome I am pursuing is worth it. In other words, they're saying pursue meaning. So in the grand scheme, what I'm saying here is that it's interesting to think about how each type has their own reality, and they cannot help but just speak from that reality. in order to see the perspective that they have, the other things must also be resisted and ignored. And thus, the reality that is meaningful for the INTP is TINE, my latest theory. What is my latest theory? And thus, what are the possibilities from that theory? And let me explore those possibilities so that I can create more theories that are more robust. I can be completely rest assured to follow that way of thinking entirely, because in it is meaning, and thus it is not suffering, it is purpose, it is meaning, it is the quest, a personal quest. And I spoke yesterday briefly about how the personal quest of an introvert will be personal, it will be subjective, it will be about who am I becoming or something like that. Whereas an extrovert would say, what am I going to be in the world? They'll say something like that. Of course, depending on what their hero function actually is, that will take on a different meaning. But that's somewhat true across the board. Maybe an extroverted sensor won't think that way, but an extroverted thinker or feeler will think, like, what is my almost like legacy? What will I contribute to the world? That will be their meaning. But for an introvert, the meaning will be, I assert that it will be more personal. As a TI user, my meaning will be, what do I wish to learn? It's actually, it doesn't go out there. It doesn't go out there at all. It just says, what do I wish to learn? That's very interesting to me. So did I speak to the idea I wanted to share? Well, yes, somewhat. I wanted to speak to the idea that there is this unavoidable inherent meaning that each of us have, realities that each of us have, and I do not have to resist, I do not have to attempt to live in other people's realities. I can live in my own, and as long as I'm doing that, I think I can endure anything, because it's my purpose. So yes, I've seen that. For a type that is not an INTP, this looks like hell. But for me, that looks like heaven. And that's fascinating thing about. That's the idea I wanted to explore. Yeah. So, talk to you next time. That's it.